Hello and welcome into the Coach on the Couch podcast with your hosts, Martin Fleming and Stephen Alexander Simmons. This fortnightly podcast covers various topics relating to subjects from career and work, health, nutrition and well-being to parenting, relationships, and much more. Each episode will deal with a particular area of these. So, if you are interested in learning and hearing some different thoughts, ideas, and even get some tips or helpful suggestions on these areas of life, or perhaps you are into self-development, then we hope you will stay with us and hopefully enjoy a fun, insightful, and what we hope will be an interesting discussion for you.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Coach on the Couch. And in this episode, we will be discussing passion. So we will explore and look at questions like, what is passion? Do we need passion to do everything or achieve things all the time? And various other aspects of passion that you may not have thought of. So stay tuned, and I hope that it will be a fun and interesting episode for you. So without further ado, let's go straight into the episode.
So this is what happens. I mean, this is live and raw. You wanted live, you wanted raw, and this is what it's all about, isn't it? Really.
Yes. So to explain to people what we're talking about is that we've already done one take of this, and this is our second take. So it'll be interesting at how different this one's going to be. But. Another day and another episode.
Yeah, it's gonna be. Do you know what? It is a fun one. I like this one because we are talking about passion today, and it's interesting, isn't it? How when you talk about passion, a lot of people kind of automatically think about the whole romance, and it being associated to romance. But of course, it's not always associated to romance. But yet we do.
Yeah.
Almost like automatically you think passion, you think, oh, romance.
Yeah, you probably would, yeah. Or I suppose the other one I think, because it's funny that you've kind of gone into that, because one of my first questions was going to be to you was, when you say passion, what's the first thing that comes to mind? So,
well, maybe that just says where my mind is at then, maybe, I think.
But I sometimes think that passion as well is associated with art.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
You tend to find that, passion is very it's related. It's a phrase that's associated with, used a lot in art. When a piece of art's produced, it usually they put their passion into it, or they put their feelings, emotions into that, and whatever. So yeah, I kind of would. I would probably, I mean, maybe the first reaction would be romance, but my other one would be kind of thinking about maybe art as well, or very extrovert people. People that say they're a passionate person and they're always like really hyper and those sort of things, and which I'm sure isn't. I can't get my head around how that's so sustainable. I think it would just wear me out.
I think it really does depend on the context, doesn't it? Because obviously we haven't really explained the context, but obviously we are talking about passion today. But I was thinking, not that you have maybe, but if you go into a dating profile, one of the questions that sometimes they ask you is, "What are your passions?" And then there's like multiple choice things you can put. I don't know, going on the beach or walking the dog or the kids and stuff like that. So it kind of does define that as a what your passions in, what makes you come alive. I'm just trying to think, from that kind of dating perspective, what are your passions, and I suppose it's about, isn't it, like what makes you come alive, what makes you feel good, what do you like doing, I suppose.
Yeah, this brings me to another question I was going to say to you and ask you is
I'm not on a dating app right now. Don't ask that.
Does someone always need does someone always need to be, or something that we do always need to have passion? Like, so to do something, or to do something, or I don't know, I suppose to do something well, or to do something, do we always have to have passion? Do we always need to be passionate?
I think it's context wise, isn't it? Because you talk about that, and it took my mind back to doing the washing up. So something as simple and mundane as doing the washing up.
Are you passionate about that then?
Exactly. I'm kind of not.
You're not? No.
About doing. It's the same with like housework and stuff like that. I mean, it's one of those things that I have to do. I don't want to do. I get overwhelmed doing it, because I was doing that video this morning about overwhelm actually and anxiety. Yeah. I was talking about how washing up gives me overwhelm. But can I be passionate about that? No, But ironically though, if I said to you, look, I don't like washing up, I'm not passionate about that, but I am passionate about having a tidy house, for example, do you know what I mean? I love the idea of having a tidy house, absolutely love that idea. But of course, I live that on my own. So the only way I'm going to have a tidy house is if I do the damn cleaning, do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So although I'm passionate about having this lovely clean house, I'm not actually that passionate about getting it clean. Do you know what I mean?
So that actually, it's interesting, because I also did washing up this morning, and I was thinking about this because I heard one of your lives this morning, and you were saying about doing the washing up, and that's what got me thinking about that kind of thing, and the passion thing. And I thought, okay, so yes, it's not something that I would be passionate, or what I would consider passionate about. I wouldn't go out of my way to, I want to do washing up all the time or whatever, that kind of a thing. Like an interest or a hobby, or that, those sort of things where you associate that with being passionate about something. But what I do find, and I don't know if this is, what was kind of going through my head was also whether it's a visual thing or a lack of vision thing for me. But I find washing up quite a contemplative exercise. I find it quite a reflective time for me. So almost like a meditative kind of opportunity. I don't know whether that's just because I can't look out the window and focus and get distracted by other things. So, and I don't need to concentrate on what I'm doing to wash up. Yeah, I need to make sure things are washed up properly, but I can go off into other realms of thought and, reflection. So although it's not something I would say I'm passionate about doing, it is productive, and it can be, I can use that as a productive thing. And it was what then sprung to mind was another podcast I've been I was looking at the other day, and they were saying about how with regards to persistence, always moving forward, no matter whether you're crawling or running, that kind of thing. So always do something to try and move forward in life. And it doesn't matter how little it is, as long as you're still moving that direction. So washing up is could be considered one of those things, because it's not something that you're going to go out of your way to do, but like in terms of setting aside, listening to or reading a book or whatever, you have to do it. You have to do your washing up. So, but it's, for me, I find it's a time that I can reflect on other things. So that in itself is then helping me to, with self-awareness, self-development, whatever, and moving forward, reflecting on situations that have happened, and
do you know what? I wonder why that is, because I mean, I've noticed that I've almost got a habit of doing this now, that every time I wash up, I think because it's such a struggle for me, like mentally, because I do get overwhelmed. It's just something as simple as washing up. I get so overwhelmed by it. So as a form of procrastination, I think, is I end up doing videos or doing some sort of like reflective stuff as well, and sharing whatever thoughts it is while I'm doing the washing up as well. And I think it's a distraction thing, because obviously I can wash up and be reflective at the same time. Do you know what I mean? But it's interesting you said that about washing up. I wonder what it is about washing up that kind of makes you reflective, or
I don't know, because I have that in the shower as well, but we won't get into showering. So yes, but yeah, I have a similar thing in the shower, that I've often come up with ideas, or being reflective, because again, I can wash myself. It's not, I don't have to.
Are we really having this shower conversation?
No, but it's just, I'm just saying, it's the same as washing up. You can do the task as long, without you don't. It doesn't take any analytical and concentration type of extra energy. So you're just doing the task, and so again, I find that another time when I'm back in there, kind of reflecting and kind of thinking about other things or whatever.
Do you know what? I mean, I'm just going to share this strange story. Actually, it's not strange, but it suddenly occurred to me as an adult that when I was growing up, my dad used to like disappear off to the toilet for ages, right? And I'd often think to myself, what is he doing in that toilet for so long? Do you know what I mean? It kind of makes me think. But now I'm an adult and I've grown up with 2 children. I know exactly what he was doing in the toilet now. He was just having his own sanctuary space and an escape, So he'd have like his little book or whatever, and he'd just go and hide away for about half an hour or whatever, just sit on the toilet, just so he could escape. But what made me think of that is because, you mentioned about like you thinking like in the shower and stuff like that. I'm sure people do, but also a lot of people are most reflective on the toilet as well, I found.
Yeah, that's another one. But
that's
interesting. The problem with back then was that most households only had one toilet, so if you needed the toilet, then everyone had to wait.
Yeah, that's true. But I'm wondering, actually, now this is probably a challenge. I'm going to set you a challenge, and also I'm going to do it for myself. But okay, so next time you do the washing up, or next time you have one of your showers, and you have one of your little thought showers, well, I know that phrase, the thought shower. My challenge to you is, because I think, do you know what? I genuinely think, I'm not making fun of them. I think they're generally inspirational. I generally do think they're inspirational. So my challenge is how many of these inspirational moments are we going to bring into fruition? That's my challenge.
My immediate response to that would be, how long's a piece of string?
You see, there you go. I think that's a challenge. Now it is. I was going to say it's 11:30, but it's not 11:30. That's just the timing on the. Do you know what? I'm just looking at my phone for 1 minute. Right, it is 10:51. What's the date today?
It's the 13th.
Right, the 13th. Okay, so I'm going to make an oath that next time I have my reflective washing up, I can't say I have a shower because my shower's not working. Whatever inspirational thoughts I have, I'm going to write it down and I'm going to do some work on it, whatever it is. So this morning, for example, I was talking about overwhelm, and so, I was kind of giving some overwhelm advice. So, but something like that, because how often do we come up with these bright ideas, but we never actually like follow them through?
Oh,
I'm taking that person. I'm not like
probably
talking to you
often.
Personally, but I'm just saying.
Probably very often,
A lot of us probably do. So I think that the challenge is the next time you think, oh, that's a great idea, just to try and let's try and do that. I think.
But to bring. See, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us do, and I think, but to bring this full circle back to the topic, if those ideas were, if we were passionate about those, how comes we don't fulfill most of them then? Because if we have these good ideas, and we at the time we might think, oh yeah, that's a great idea, but why is it we're not? I mean, it might not be to do with passion. It might be a completely different topic that we can visit in another podcast.
I think, this is only my thought on that. And I think what it is because we have this spark of inspiration, which is great. And in the moment, the spark of inspiration is fantastic. You can fly, you can do anything on this spark of inspiration, right? And then what happens is you move away from that situation, a minute later, 2 minutes later, 5 minutes later, whatever. And then what your brain does, it goes, oh, hold on a minute. You know that spark of inspiration, right? Yeah. And you're like a little dog with a bone or something. Yeah, you're really excited. And then the brain says, well, actually, have you thought about this? You go, what do you mean, thought about it? And it says, well, actually, have you thought about the consequences? Have you thought about the cost of this? Have you thought about how much work is involved in this? Have you thought about this? And then suddenly you've lost complete, maybe, I can't be bothered with that after all then. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe.
So I think sometimes there's a bit of the overthinking where sometimes I think you just have to just do it, I think, and almost not count the costs sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it could be that. I think other things are obviously that, if you've got family, you've got other things going on, life, what I call life stuff gets in the way, and you just forget about stuff. You have these moments, and because you're not harnessing them and you're not writing them down or, taking note of them somewhere along the way, recording it in some fashion, that it just gets forgotten about, and you get caught up in all your other stuff again.
But don't you find that? I mean, this happens to me a lot. So we have these moments of inspiration, life happens, I totally agree with that 100%. But then at some point, it kind of revisits you. And if you still don't do anything about it, it revisits you again. And eventually, it's like 40 years have passed, and it's like, oh, do you know what? I either do this or I don't. And,
Yeah. That's the saying that I often use, though.
Which is what?
What you resist persists.
Yeah. And do you know what? Do you want to say a little bit more about that? I love that phrase. I did laugh out loud when you first taught me that, because I thought, here he is with nonsense wisdom again. But actually, there's a lot of wisdom in that, isn't there?
Oh, I've if not myself, I've experienced it so many times with other people as well. The amount of times people say, oh, well, I saw this but I didn't do anything with it, and and then, oh, I went so and so place or whatever, and there was, I don't know, whatever related to it again, and it just shows up, and depending on what people's ideas and philosophies are on the things to do with the universe or higher powers and all that, but it's that's usually the universe has reasons for stuff. I mean, again, we can get into other podcasts about kind of there's about universal plans, or things happen for reasons and all those kind of phrases. That would be a podcast in itself, but
I'm writing this down because you know what we're like. We come up with all these fantastic ideas, and then we never actually do them.
But yeah, I think, and even from a practical point of view, if you look at it from what marketers say, when people are marketing to you, again, they have that kind of persistent way of doing it, because they know that people won't do something until they've seen it at least 7 times.
Wow.
So it has to show up at least 7 times before you'll act on it. So you get a flyer through the door the first time, it goes straight in the bin. Second time, this again, you have another little bit of a read, but again, you just throw it away. Third time, you might put it to one side, go, I'll look at that later or whatever. And it's like, the more and more it gets to the 7th, once you get to the 7th time, they go, oh yeah, I think I will give them a call now and whatever, and then they'll act on it. So again, persistence and that kind of thing. So, but the world and the universe seems to have a way of doing that as well. If there's things that you should be doing or you should pursue, or whether we believe in there's a grand scheme of things or whatever, but yeah, it tends to show up a lot. So, Yeah, I mean, back to passion though. Yeah, I just wonder if, like I said at the start, do we always need to have passion involved in what we do, or and does it make a difference whether if we're doing something without passion, or what is I suppose what is passion to begin with? Like, what is it? What's that quality that defines whether it's passion or not? And do again, do we need it for everything we do?
I don't think we need it for everything that we do at all. I don't think it is. But I think if we want to do something well, maybe, then I think there's I think there's a time and a place for it, isn't there? So I think, for example, like my sister was an Olympic swimmer, and the thought of going up and down, the amount of training that she did, absolutely stupid amounts, like, she'd go up and down the pool, then up and down again, then up and down again, and up and down again, and up and down again. And the thought of that absolutely mundanes my head out of me, do you know what I mean? And this is why I couldn't go into swimming. But for her, without a passion for swimming, or without a passion to succeed, or without a passion of some description, there's no way she could have reached the level that she did do, and she's still doing. Do you know what I mean? Without a form of passion.
What gives her that passion, though?
I think I think personally, I mean, having known her for as long as I have, I think it's that desire to succeed, I think, and to be the best that she can possibly be. I think that is the I mean, we talked about driving forces, didn't we, behind it? And I think for her, I think
in the previous take,
yeah. But for her, you see, originally it was I'm competitive, and I want to be the best, as in I want to be the best compared to somebody else. But then I think as she grew up and she developed herself as a person, I think she just wanted to be the best person that she could be. Do you know what I mean? So when she was racing, for example, she didn't necessarily, in her mind, it wasn't about, I want to beat so-and-so. It was about, I want to beat my personal best time. And so there was always a celebration when she beat her personal best. Didn't matter if it was a world record or not. Yeah, that was nice. But it was all about, have I beaten my personal best? So
yeah. But I think passion comes from emotion, though. I think passion has to, some of its source of energy and being comes from, I mean, it's funny because one of your lives this morning, you spoke about really like liking things or loving stuff, and you were saying about your pasty and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
from
I do
the
like
garage.
pasta, yeah.
And about kind of, you were talking about habits at the time. I think it has to have an element of loving what you do or whatever. Now, it's like they say. Now, I know we have a few differing views or thoughts on life purpose, but just purpose in general. I think it's like when they say you can't have a purpose without passion. So I think that would be one of the biggest things I've been, I'd say that I could really say I've been passionate about in my life and stuff about was my whole judo kind of, would you call it a career? I don't know. I made it to national squad level, but yeah.
Do you know, it's interesting because, when I first got into personal development, as you do, I had one of these so-called coaches, inverted brackets, ask me, the questions as they do, a new coach, and they're like, so Steve, what are your passions? And I just couldn't, honestly, I couldn't answer them because I felt like at the time, life just happens. I don't really have any passions. You know what I mean? They're like, yes, but surely you must be passionate about something.
Yeah, that was going to be my other.
And I was like, well, actually, no, I don't really have any passion. But you must have like something that you really are hugely passionate about. No, not really. And then of course, when I was looking at being a coach myself, they were like, okay, Steve, so what area of coaching are you passionate about? And I'm like, I don't really know.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of coach are you going to be then? How can you coach people,
kind of people
if you don't have any passions and you don't know the passion that you're going to be teaching around? And it was all like passion. I was like, and I felt such like, I don't know. I felt like I was kind of, was it Stan Laurel? And when he scratches his head, he goes, I'm sorry, Ollie, because I just couldn't answer them. I'm like, well, yeah, I hear where you're coming from. You've got a good point, and maybe you need to do some more work around this. But I just couldn't relate. They were throwing this word passion out. I'm like, well, actually, where I'm at right now, I don't feel like I've got any passions actually.
But that goes back to my point when I said to you about, like, do you need to be passionate about everything, and these other people that are always or say that they're passionate people, but like, I suppose the additional point to that that I was going to bring up was, like, why is it then that there's a lot of people out there, they don't really know if they're passionate or if they have any passions, but then is that just because they've never thought about it and they've not really channeled it, and they've never been like broached all those questions like you were? I mean, I hope they weren't fired at you quite as intensely. Like
yes,
that,
they were. Yes, they were. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think people typically have had, some of those people probably haven't been asked those kind of questions to have really, thought about it and whatever. But, a gentler way kind of round that, I suppose, would be to ask people, what are they interested in? I think
that's a better question
and
to
I think
ask.
that's a bit more relatable to people, because, people don't always, I think, understand, the passion, as we started off saying, passion is typically associated with romance. So when you talk about passion, and then it's given that feeling of intensity, like a high energy. So when you say, what you're passionate about, people, I think in general, generalizing a bit, I think people feel, well, that I'm not passionate about anything because that's a really intense thing. But if you come from it a different kind of, it's using those kind of, it's about terminology and stuff, and doing NLP, that words and phrases mean can give off different meanings and stuff. So again, I think it's all about that. So you talk to people about interests and what interests them, or what motivates them. Even motivating, using that word can be different for people. What's important to them. So all of those things mount up to what they could be being passionate about, but they've never thought about it in that way.
I mean, without sounding facetious now, and it is just a generalised question, but do you think there's a lot of, how do I say this nicely? I'm just going to say it. A lot of false passion out there, or a lot of inauthentic passion out there in regards to, a lot of, I mean, you go on Facebook, for example, and you go on a lot of socials, and everything's like, hey, this is amazing, this is the sort of thing that you want to have this kind of lifestyle, you want to have this kind of car, you want to have this, and do you know what I mean?
Hype, I think, yes, I think what I would call as hype, that would be, it could be the result for some people, but what they don't tell you is all the work that they put in behind that to get to where they are. And things aren't always as easy as they're made out to be.
So it kind of makes it sound more inauthentic. I mean, like you said, that was me being judgmental. And I apologise for that, because I think you're right.
So I think it's hype, and from a marketer's point of view, it's to reel people in, isn't it? And to get the sale, or get the whatever it is out there. Is part of the what traditionally would have been called the pitch, like your sales pitch or whatever. But there's a lot of hype, and that would be more inauthentic, or whatever the phrase would be. I think also there's a lot of these days with social media and those kind of outlets, which we didn't have many years ago. Makes me sound really old, that.
Well, you
I-
were
I-
born
I-
before Facebook and a
I-
lot of the social media,
Well, yeah.
and before mobile phones,
I was I
and before Sky,
yeah, and before
microwave,
before the popularity of things like the internet and the first PCs.
What you were? Hold on a minute. You were born before the internet.
Before it was public, yeah.
Wow. How old are you?
No,
Well, it's funny though, isn't it? Because we think the
internet was developed. Well, ARPANET. Now, like I don't want
Oh,
to take,
yeah, here we go.
I don't want to take away from this podcast, right? So quick.
He's a bit passionate about his tech. Go on.
A whistle stop tour for you.
Go on.
So
then. Educate us.
ARPANET was developed as a military network, right? It was a military invention, developed in the US, and that was the birth and that was the founding of the internet. But it was only used within the military. Now that was actually founded in, well, real start of that would have been in and around the late 40s.
Wow.
But it was only kind of networking and that kind of stuff. You can imagine the computing. You only have to look at 60s movies with the computers that they used then. Like what we use today would take up probably about 3 buildings of what was needed in the 60s or whatever. So computing was like it was only big corporations or big government departments had that, and it was able, and networking was only available in that way. So ARPANET was the founding foundations of it, the internet, and then it was only roughly in around about the mid 70s, late 70s, that it started to appear as a more user base, open to public use or whatever. I mean, again, you'd probably only have it in libraries and that kind of thing. The internet only really grew on popularity and made it to the public domain in the 90s, to be honest. I remember, because I remember all the early, we still didn't have Windows back then, and we had early versions, but you didn't have Facebook and all that. You had things like these bulletin boards, and you had email. You just had email, basic email. You had bulletin boards. You had some basic websites, and that was about it. So, but anyway.
But the thing is, though, you talk about that, but there's no way you'd know all that if you wasn't passionate about your tech.
Well, but my early career history was in telecoms and computing, so.
But I mean, the way you talk about it, though, I mean, you can tell there is that passion for it, though.
Yeah, to some degree, probably not in quite the same way. But back to what I was saying earlier on, I think your passion for things can change a bit. My passion for up to date tech can waver, I feel that, like, with the platforms today, so going back to that whole hype thing, I think that there's a lot of many people have, say, like a public image, an online image, which is probably very, very different to what things are offline, and their attitudes. And people go online, I've seen it lots and lots of times, and they'll be all upbeat, or they'll be very personal development, kind of self-awareness type of, saying all this stuff about motivation or keeping motivated, and lots of different things to do with kind of mindfulness or whatever. And then offline, they're very, very different people. So I think there is some, especially on those media, those platforms and that kind of environment, there's a lot of this inauthentic kind of way of being.
See, the reason I asked that deliberately, because I think true passion is something that is authentic. So when I talk about food, that is a passion of mine. When I talk about anything that I'm passionate about, it does come from an authentic place.
Yeah, because you have to love it. If you love something and you feel that, then it's authentic and that's passion. So, you know, which is different to drive. Drive can be driven by many other factors and can be driven by goals or deadlines, targets. You know, you don't need to necessarily love what you're doing, but you can be driven to do something.
So one of the questions, unfortunately, it wasn't, the last episode wasn't recorded, but one of the questions I really liked from you actually, and it's a great question, is I'm going to have to just rephrase it because I can't remember the exact wording. Is something around, can you be taught to be more passionate, or can you be taught to be passionate?
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that, because that says to me, number one, well, why would you want to be, if it's not something that comes natural,
Mm-hmm.
then A, is it worth doing? Should you be doing it? And B, if it's something that's taught,
Mm-hmm.
how sustainable is that? How sustainable is that going to be? Again, if it's not natural, if it's not authentic.
Okay.
Can you sort of be more passionate about something? I think you can, to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very interesting question that obviously I have been thinking about it a little bit more since.
Uh-huh. Well,
Since.
I'll throw a little bit of it's not a spanner, but just a different aspect of that.
Okay.
So okay, if you may not be able to be taught to be passionate about something,
Mm-hmm.
but what you don't know, right? So if you've not experienced everything, or you've not experienced something, then until you've done it, do you know whether you're going to be passionate about it? Because if you've never experienced it, then you can't say. So if you taught someone something, a skill that they never had, and even if they thought at the time, oh no, I don't know if that's really for me, but if they were open to being taught, and then they learn a new skill, a new whatever it was, sport, anything, could they not then develop passion for that?
Yeah, I mean, totally. I mean, that kind of makes me think that a lot of, when I'm doing my coaching with people, one of the things that I do is I challenge people to change their perspective, because a lot of people only have like the one vision or the one focus. And so my job as a coach is to come along and say, look, have you thought about this? Have you considered this? Not to tell them the answers, but to show them, there's this, that's, and this, that's, and this, that's, and this, and that, but this answer. And to kind of give them different perspectives. And then suddenly it's like you literally do have just turn the light on for them, because suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, I never thought about it like that. Oh, I didn't think I had an option. I didn't think. So suddenly you've given them like this whole plate, it's almost like buffet of thought, if you like. And then suddenly, like you said, you can teach them that, because there is this passion suddenly, they do find this light within them. They do find something that makes them come alive. It's like, wow. And you do give them that wow factor. And all you've done is simply offered them a little change of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So in that regards, I think you can teach someone to maybe look at a different perspective, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, again, it can bring us on to another topic of staying open to opportunities and that kind of thing. If people are willing to be open to opportunities, then they'll find passion in other things that they never knew they had passion for, is the simplest way of putting it.
So I mean, before we go today, then, if somebody's listening to this today and they're like, oh yeah, I quite like what you're saying about this passion, but they wanted to, I don't know, to find more passion in what they're doing. Like, for example, and I'll give you an example. So you help people with employment, for example, or health, and they want to be more passionate about work, life, balance. How would you? What would you do to help them? Or what advice would you give to your listeners right now if they were sitting there thinking, do you know what, my life's a bit crap, my job's crap.
If the job isn't if they don't enjoy what they do, and they don't like what they do, well, the first point of reference is, was it something they enjoyed and liked at the beginning when they first started that job, if depending on how long they've been doing the job for. Because if so, then there's a reason for why that's lessened or it's no longer there, and that's a question of identifying that, which, you know, there's several things I go through to try and re-establish that. And if they've never enjoyed it, which actually is quite common for most people are we're just taught you go out and get a job, and that's it. It does
just no job.
No, and then besides that, the old kind of idea or the old way of doing things, like when you were at school and that kind of thing, you had your careers guidance, and the only aspects they were interested in was your skills and or your abilities and your qualifications. So, you know, oh well, you've got this oh yeah, you could go and do this job or whatever, you know, or to do this job you need to be you've got to have these qualifications, or, you know, whatever. It was all qualification, skills based, and that serves a purpose and has a place, but it doesn't mean that you're going to enjoy that. So there's a lot of I did have coaching clients many years ago. His career's been, in most people's eyes, has been quite a successful career. He was a teacher. He went into teaching and that kind of thing. But like he said to me when we were going through the sessions, it was basically expected of him. It was something that he could do. He had qualifications for, and it was a respected profession. So that's what he did it. His passion and what he really wanted to do and his interest was in music.
That's interesting, isn't it?
So,
but he never fulfilled that.
No,
because he was too busy doing what he felt was expected or required of him. And
he'd come to me. Part of what he was coming to me for was because he was at a point where he just wanted to do something different, but he was also at that point where, which is again another topic that we could do a complete podcast about change and fear of change. He was reluctant to just, you know, jump into something else. It's a stable income. He had a job. He had a family. He couldn't just up and leave that and try and, you know, the music industry can be quite a risky industry. And to just leave something and go and try and start from nothing in there and you know, try and get it working is quite a risk. So there was, you know, obviously we were doing work around, like, was there any ways in which he could you know, what's the word, transit between, you know, slowly kind of move between the two or whatever, and start doing more of what he enjoyed doing or whatever. So there is you know, as I say, there is so many people out there that are in jobs that they and work that they don't enjoy. But so I think, look at what your interests are, what your motivations are. You know, what does make you feel passionate? What does make you, you know, what do you really enjoy and you'd get up in the morning for, or you'd look forward to? What are the things that you look forward to doing? And is there something that you can link to that or work in a field relating to that? So that's what I do with my clients. That's how I work with them. If there isn't just a kind of, sounds a bit of a way out there kind of philosophy, but obviously the way I approach it and the tools I use, it works. But is the other thing is, if there isn't a job out there,
create one.
Then yes, then if that's what you really want to do, then create one. Now that might be within the work you're doing currently. You can do it within that. So you just change up some of the role that you do, or depending on what kind of role you're in or whatever, you might be able to adapt things in a way that starts making you feel better about the role or whatever, or get out and I mean, for some people it might be in terms of creating the ideal type job or whatever is to maybe create their own business or whatever and work at that and offer what they're passionate about. So there's many ways. If it doesn't exist currently, then try and make it exist and fit with what you do. Now, that all has degrees, and it all depends on, we all have to do reality checks as well. But that would be the best kind of advice I would give to people within definitely the work environment type thing. Work-life balance, again, if you're not happy, then it's looking at those things. What are the things that are not making you happy? What are the things that do make you happy? Is there a way that you can build more of what you like into that? And balance. It's because it comes back to that word, balance. So it's like there's an imbalance somewhere if you're not happy. So let's look at that. What you sacrificing or neglecting, or giving up, which I suppose that's sacrificing or whatever. But what are you losing to that's making you not happy? And other things that can drain your passions are things like other things that you've mentioned before as well about overwhelm. Overwhelm can do that.
So if people wanted to get in touch with you, I love that, because I think you're absolutely right, and I think many people do fall into that trap, don't they? So if they wanted to get in touch with you to chat about that, how best would they do that?
They can contact us through they can leave comments on the Anchor platform directly, or and we can get in touch, or they can email us on got to remember the email address now for the podcast, coachonthecouch22@gmail.com.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Martin. That is me and Martin finishing for today's podcast. It's been really good, actually. I've really enjoyed this. So thank you, Martin. And
I'm pretty sure it's recorded.
Yeah, I think it has. So please do join us again for our next session. And more Madness and Mayhem. See you then. Take care. Bye.
Thank you again for joining us for this episode. In today's episode, we covered the topic of passion and explored various aspects and questions around that topic, such as, do we need passion to achieve things? When do we feel passionate about things? Is it always a good thing? And many other areas that we looked at. So I hope that you found it really useful and perhaps even thought-provoking. Maybe we discussed and looked at an angle that perhaps you never thought of before, or looked at something before in that way. So yes, we look forward to being with you in another couple of weeks, and with another hopefully interesting and enjoyable and fun episode. So I want to just thank you again and look forward to being with you very soon.
Thank you for listening to the fortnightly Coach on the Couch podcast with your hosts, Martin Fleming and Stephen Alexander Simmons. You can find this podcast on the following platforms: Spotify, Anchor, and Google Podcasts, and more platforms to follow. You can leave comments and feedback directly on the Anchor platform, or you can contact us directly by emailing us at coachonthecouch22@gmail.com. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to being with you soon.